In the dense jungles of Southeast Asia, American soldiers began carrying a bizarre, non-military item tucked into the bands of their helmets, the Ace of Spades. This wasn't for downtime entertainment or gambling, but rather a chilling psychological footprint left behind in the wake of intense firefights. U.S. troops deliberately placed this single playing card over the eyes of fallen enemy fighters or scattered them across trails before a planned assault. Dubbed the Death Card, it was deployed as a calling card to signal that the American military had claimed the territory. What started as a decentralized, grassroots practice among frontline soldiers quickly evolved into a massive, organized psychological operations campaign. On February 7, 1966, a short report in the military newspaper Stars and Stripes introduced an idea that would rapidly circulate through American barracks and command spaces. The article detailed remarks made by Congressman Craig Hosmer, who asserted that the Viet Cong were highly superstitious and held a deep dread of two specific symbols: the image of a woman and the Ace of Spades. In the orderly room of Company C, 2nd Battalion, 35th Infantry, 4 young officers read the piece with keen interest. Lieutenants Barry Zayce, Thomas Wissinger, Charles Brown, and a Lieutenant Davis examined a standard deck of bicycle playing cards. They noticed that the card's back design featured a depiction of Lady Liberty, which they connected to the congressman's mention of a woman. Believing they had found an easily exploitable cultural vulnerability, the officers decided to test the theory. The rumor quickly took on a life of its own, convincing soldiers that the enemy would flee from the mere sight of the card and scare them away without a fight. This belief, however, rested on a fundamental misunderstanding of Vietnamese society. Anthropological research and historical records demonstrate that Western playing cards were virtually unknown in rural Vietnam during the 1960s. The spade lacked any traditional, death-related meaning in native folklore. In Vietnamese culture, the complex rituals surrounding mortality and grief rely on specific, time-honored symbols. Mourning is marked by plain white garments worn by families, chrysanthemums placed on family altars, and the burning of hell money during funerary rites. A glossy, foreign playing card held no symbolic weight in this traditional belief system. Post-war oral histories from Vietnamese combatants and civilians reveal that their initial reaction to these cards was complete bewilderment. When villagers first encountered the black and white cards left on the eyes of fallen fighters or scattered along jungle pathways, they did not recognize them as omens. They simply saw unfamiliar trash. The symbol only acquired real power through repeated, violent exposure. As American troops consistently left the cards in the wake of devastating firefights, the Vietnamese began to draw a logical connection. The card represented the lethal presence of American infantry rather than an ancient curse. The Ace of Spades eventually became a genuine psychological weapon, but its power was entirely manufactured by the violence that accompanied it. American troops began writing letters home, pleading with families to send loose aces of spades stripped from standard playing decks. But this grassroots demand quickly outpaced what could be mailed in handwritten envelopes. In February 1966, the supply line formalized. Officers within the 25th Infantry Division drafted a direct request to the United States Playing Card Company in Cincinnati, Ohio. The correspondents asked for an unprecedented product: complete decks containing nothing but the bicycle Ace of Spades. The corporate response from Cincinnati was immediate. The factory manufactured the specialized card on standard bicycle stock, packaging them in plain white tuck cases with no other markings. The company shipped thousands of these specialized decks free of charge, absorbing the printing costs as a direct contribution to the war effort. This production run eventually sent millions of individual cards into the theater. These shipments entered the military logistics network, packed inside crates stamped "Bicycle Secret Weapon" in red block letters. They traveled through the strategic deepwater port at Cam Ranh Bay, appearing on official shipping manifests alongside ammunition, rations, and medical supplies. When the cargo arrived at forward operating bases, the improvised habit officially crossed into organized material support. Supply clerks distributed the plain white boxes to infantry companies, where soldiers opened them and passed out the single card packs before combat patrols. The transition was complete, linking industrial production in Ohio directly to combat operations in the Vietnamese jungle. By the summer of 1966, the informal battlefield ritual caught the attention of the military bureaucracy. Planners within the 4th Psychological Operations Group saw an opportunity to scale the practice, transforming an infantry custom into an organized propaganda campaign. A declassified intelligence assessment, titled Ace of Spades Proving Effective Psychological Warfare Ammunition in Vietnam, documented the transition of the card into a formal military asset. With institutional adoption came physical modifications. Planners began printing ominous Vietnamese text on the back of the cards. Some carried anti-communist warnings, such as statements asserting that death awaited those who followed the Viet Cong. These altered cards were no longer used for games. They were weaponized leaflets. The method of delivery shifted from the ground to the AIR. In addition to hand-placed cards, transport planes and low-altitude helicopters began scattering them over contested territory. Operational logs record 30 transport flights dropping thousands of cards over the A Shau Valley and the Central Highlands. This aerial dissemination aimed to saturate entire regions, creating the psychological pressure of a silent, omnipresent threat watching from the jungle canopy. While the bureaucracy managed the air campaign, frontline infantrymen deepened their emotional connection to the card. For young Americans navigating the stress of guerrilla warfare, the Ace of Spades became a vital talisman. Soldiers tucked the card into their M1 helmet bands or taped it to rifle stocks. The ritual acted as a psychological shield, providing a sense of control and collective identity in an environment where safety was non-existent. The symbol now operated on 2 distinct fronts, as an instrument of terror for the enemy and a source of comfort for the American soldier. Declassified files and post-war records reveal a starkly different reality from the psychological triumphs reported in American newspapers. The cards never triggered the mass superstitious retreats that military planners envisioned. North Vietnamese soldiers and local guerrillas did not flee from a paper symbol. Instead, the card functioned as a concrete tactical signal. Encountering an Ace of Spades on a jungle trail meant one specific thing. A lethal, heavily armed American infantry unit was in the immediate area. Opposing forces analyzed the markers as evidence of pursuit. A June 1966 military report near Pleiku noted that enemy patrols halted for up to 30 minutes upon finding cards, utilizing the time to adjust their security and delay their movements in anticipation of a nearby ambush. The reaction was calculated and tactical, empty of supernatural dread. For Vietnamese civilians and combatants, the cards came to represent American arrogance and cruelty. Leaving the personal symbol of a foreign manufacturer on the bodies of dead soldiers and in local villages fueled deep resentment. Rather than breaking the enemy's will, the calling card hardened resistance, serving as proof of the occupying force's dehumanizing behavior. In the end, the psychological weapon succeeded only through the raw violence associated with it. The card possessed no inherent mystical terror. Its power was manufactured entirely by the bullets and artillery that followed. Today, the Ace of Spades remains a stark warning about cultural blindness in modern conflict. When we fail to understand the enemy, we rely on violence to make our myths real. Ultimately, force does not translate culture, and it merely projects our own fears. Share your thoughts below.